This is AndyTube. In this video, I'm going to show you how to remove, replace, and eliminate end play or binding in the thread take-up mechanism on Stella, the Singer Model 237. I was hoping I would be doing a video about this zigzag mechanism here, but I still have some questions about my thinking, and I don't want to steer you wrong. So I've emailed a friend up in Canada who's retired from the Singer Corporation up there, and to discuss this with him and get his opinion. So I'm still working on that, and I'll get there eventually. But I decided maybe a good video to do now would be this take-up lever mechanism, because we've taken out the needle bar vibrating bracket along with the pressure bar and needle bar. I showed you that in the previous video, how to take that out and put it back in and make the adjustments when you do that. So I took it back out, and if you didn't see that video, I'll put a link to it at the end of this video and in the description area below the video. The thread take-up mechanism here is what controls the slack on the needle thread as it enters the needle. And you may have to take this apart to clean it, or you may need to remove and replace broken parts on it. It looks to me like most of these parts are metal. I'm not sure why this connecting link between the take-up lever here and the body is black. So it may be plastic, but it still may be metal, so I'm going to take a closer look at it here. But that's why you may need to take this out. These have been known to break, especially if the machine tips over, and this can snap off here, and the little hinge stud and hinge screw can get worn to the point that it gets pretty noisy. So that's what this video is going to take a look at here. And once you have the vibrating bracket out, you've done all the harder, more involved work to get this out. So it connects here. This is kind of like an anchor, where it anchors into the body. Let me turn the arm shaft here, and you can see it kind of rotate. And there is like a hinge pin that goes into the counterweight here at the end of the arm shaft. So that connects to it. When the arm shaft rotates, that's what makes the take-up lever rotate, and this needle bar connecting link goes to the needle bar connecting stud that holds the needle bar. And we removed that when we took out the vibrating bracket, so you can see that's why they call this the needle bar like link. Okay, so this hinge pin, it's not a screw, it's just called a hinge pin, and hinge because the mechanism can hinge on it. Sometimes I call it a swivel pin, but that's mistaken. Anyway, it's set into the body, and it's held in place by a set screw that is accessed over here on the side of the body. Move this up a little. See if I can get this one more light maybe. Oh, that's nice. So deep inside this hole is a set screw that holds the hinge pin. And it's so far in there that my my little Chapman hollow point screwdriver tip isn't long enough to go in there and reach it. And that's the only drawback of having this driver with changeable bits. So I've got out my trusty old Bell System screwdriver combo, and that is definitely long enough to reach in there. And this can be, again, a screw that's factory set and never been removed, so don't be surprised if it's stubborn. You can put some penetrating oil in there and let it work for a while if you struggle to get it out. You sure don't want to strip the head of that set screw. And you can remove this completely from the body if you want. I've mentioned before, I kind of like to leave mine in place because I tend to lose them when I take them out. Now, so we've got that one hinge pin loose, and the other one that goes into this counterweight here is held in place also by a set screw that's on the side of the counterweight. So you need to rotate everything and get it up into a position. This is going to be maybe hard to see here. Right here on the side of this part of the counterweight is the set screw for this swivel stud. So if you get this turned into a position where you can take your screwdriver over the top edge of the machine and see if I can do this without turning and angle it in there like about like that, right into there. That's where that set screw is for the hinge stud. So you need to either hold the hand wheel or the mechanism here to keep it, because when you push in on it to apply pressure, the counterweight's just going to try and rotate away from you. Okay, so secure it here like I'm doing, or hold the hand wheel at the other end and get that set screw loosened up. And then again, you can, let me turn this here so you can see it a little bit better there, maybe. Right there. You can take this out if you like, or back it out pretty good. When you start, that screw is slightly countersunk into the counterweight. It's a little bit below the surface. So I bring it out about halfway, and that's usually enough. Then I like to rotate this mechanism a little bit so I can find a nice, there, I kind of do it like that. Let me turn it around now. So if you were, if you had this sitting the normal way and you were looking at the end, that's kind of how I like it. One hinge pin here, straight across, kind of straight down to the other hinge pin up here. Then you should just be able to pull it right out like that. Okay, so you see the hole where this swivel stud sits in there. It just sits right in there like that. Okay. So we've got that piece. Then the piece that that fell off, the other swivel stud, is on this little connecting link. See how the stud comes, and then there's kind of like this oval link that goes to this is a swivel screw, and it actually screws these two pieces together. And you can take that apart if you like. But this is the other stud that goes into the stud hole up in the counterweight. Right? So it goes like that. So when I pulled it, the pieces came apart. So I'll set the machine down and show you. But that set screw is right over here on the side. So I had it turned about there, these holes lined up, so that I could get my screwdriver in at the angle to turn that set screw. Okay, and let's put this guy down here, and then I can get these two pieces here and show you. So I still want to, well, let me show you how these work together. It's real simple. This is going to sit into the machine like that, and then this other stud passes through the actual take-up lever. It just slides right through there like that, and then this swivel stud is what goes into the counterweight, like so. And then your needle bar connecting stud just slides right in there. It's like a swivel stud, just slides right in there. So that's how it all works together. Okay, so I'm gonna, this is what, when I pulled everything out, I pulled it right out of the take-up lever. So I want to take a look at this. Some versions of the machines, this hinge stud has a real thin cap screw up here that holds it to the connecting link. And this has one of these circlips. It's like about 3/4 or 80% of a washer that has little points inside that clip into a groove. So if you want to separate it, you have to put your pliers in there, your clip pliers, and pry that open a little bit and push it off. I don't take the cap screws off, and I usually don't take this off because you can clean this real easy now with a little crud cutter or alcohol or whatever you choose, you know, without disassembling this even more. Of course, if something had to be replaced, then you would want to. Well, look at all that, even though I cleaned it pretty good. So this is the part I'm wondering here, this black, if this is plastic or metal. Some of the machines from this decade, the 70s and later, this changed to a plastic part. And I'm not sure why, how much money they saved or anything. But this is metal. I can tell now this is definitely metal. So on the older machines, this was also chrome plated steel like the rest of the take-up lever. So I'm not sure why it's black, but maybe they saved a little money chroming, you know. They didn't have to triple plate it with chromium. So that's kind of half of it. And like I said, this is actually the take-up lever, and this is these two parts are put together. I forget what you call this piece of metal that presses in and then the other end is spread apart. A rivet, maybe. So that doesn't come apart. So if this breaks off, unless you have some kind of a tool that you can drill that out and replace it, you usually have to buy at least this much if you can find a seller selling this much. Usually what you're going to see on eBay and Bonanza and stuff are sellers selling this whole kind of rig like this, and maybe even the needle bar connecting stud. And if they do sell this, hopefully they're going to have the associated set screws, including the needle clamping screw that would hold the needle in the clamp here. And I've had to replace a few of these over the years, usually because this breaks, this little arm right here, usually. But I have a couple that it was just really noisy and I kept adjusting it and it didn't help. And I finally took it out, and the hinge stud was just worn out and real bad, and I think it was because it was never lubricated. And when I just bought a setup like this, a used setup, and put the whole thing in, and it was perfect. I was worried I was going to have to replace the counterweight, but just replacing this part that had damaged. I've had a couple of those, but they were on machines like from the 1920s. So now here's a couple more things I want to show you here. And one is on the what I call the anchoring hinge stud over here. There is a milled out or machined out spot here that is a low spot, and that's where when you put it in the machine, that's where the set screw comes into that low spot, and that's what prevents it from moving in and out with only one set screw. So it's round and milled the same all the way around the stud. Okay. So it doesn't matter the position of that stud once it's in the hole, because the set screw is just going to go in this low spot. And you notice that the low spot it's wider than the set screw, and that's because this needs to be adjusted, because this mechanism can be loose and have what's called play in it, which means it kind of moves around in and out too much. That's what they mean by play. And this mechanism can also have binding, which means that it's the hinge studs are in too tight into the counterweight, or this is in too tight into the body, the anchoring swivel stud, and as this thing is trying to go up and down and around on every stroke, these moving here's my other hand. It's kind of going around and around. These moving parts, if they're all too tight together, can bind. And you're way at the opposite end of the motor. So you've got a motor on the other end of this arm that has a belt turning the hand wheel that's turning everything in this machine by way of that arm the main horizontal arm shaft. It's making your lift, it's turning your hook and bobbin. It could be doing your zigzag stuff on a zigzag machine. It's turning this counterweight, where this is driving the needle bar. So even if it's way down here on the end, and if it binds a little bit, it can really slow down your machine and make it so erratic. So you never want binding on this. Now let me show you this connecting link stuff here. Right? Showed you this other stud that goes into counterbalance. This is a hinge screw to screw these two little pieces together. And this is the needle bar connecting link, and then you have your needle bar connecting stud and needle bar. Okay. Now this hinge stud, it's not milled out all the way around because it's got a big old flat spot right in it. Right there. And that has to, as a matter of fact, you can kind of see the wear spot from the set screw, that little shiny circle there in the middle. And that's wide, like the milled spot on the other stud, because you can move it in and out to adjust for end play and binding. But because this is the driver, you can't have this end of the stud twisting. So they give you a big flat spot to put that set screw in to hold it steady while it you know it turns around in the counterweight. So you have to be real aware of this one. When you put it in, you have to line up that flat spot with where your set screw is going to go in. It has to be lined up just like that, so the set screw can anchor it and hold it and keep it from twisting. And I'll show you how to do that, but a good way that often helps me is, if you have this lined up and the set screw goes in here, the set screw is going to go inside the hole just a tiny bit. You see, that's not milled out very much. You know, it's just like the thickness of a screwdriver blade or more. But when you got your set screw in there, it countersinks a tiny bit into this counterbalance. But if this is turned and your set screw is on the smooth part, the screw will not go in as far. And you can put it in and tighten it, and you know what? It'll feel pretty good, and you think, okay, I got it, and sew and adjust the binding, but it's eventually going to get loose, and then you got a real mess. So you have to be sure. And if you put the set screw against the smooth part, the set screw is not going to be countersunk a little bit into this counterbalance. It's going to be barely sticking up against the outside of the counterbalance. It won't go in as far, and you say, oh, okay, I am not on this flat spot. Because when I am on the flat spot, the screw goes down inside the counterbalance. Okay, so let me wipe this off a little bit. And I have seen some machines and worked on them that are pretty rusty up here, and you get them all apart and you use the Must for Rust or Evapro Rust, something like that, and you de-rust these and polish them up and oil them, and boy, they will work very fine. They will work good. But you got to take them all apart. You see how I clean the machine if you watch the cleaning video, but look at all the, you know, the dark old oil and dust and dirt and stuff that works its way all the way inside that counterbalance, you know, because the oil carries it in there and it kind of gets stuck in there. As a matter of fact, see if I can grab a Q-tip here and see if let's see how this looks. I don't have any crud cutter or anything, it's just a dry, but let's go in there and take a look. Swab that around. Ooh, look at that. See what I'm talking about? So when you see stuff like this, that's why when I do a machine, I take it apart. You know, I want to get all this out because it didn't come from the factory like this, and I'm trying to do a very nice restoration for my customer. So I take all that out before I clean the machine. And then this let's see, get this back up here. This anchor, this hole for this stud, that's just a hole milled right into the steel body. It's going to be the same way. You know, it's usually going to be filled with all this junk. So it's good for me to take that off and clean it, maybe stick a brush in there and make sure I got crud cutter and swabbed it all out and so forth. And you can also see maybe some of these darker areas down here that you know, even though I worked a brush in there, you'll see some areas that still have some of that dark grease. And if you want, while you have that vibrating bracket off, like I mentioned in the other video, you can take these screws out and clean. This is the pressure bar lifting lever, and it's on a hinge screw. You screw the screw in as far as you can, but it's got a little space under the head without threads, and so that's why it can hinge like that. And this is also a hinge screw. And when you lift this bracket goes over and pushes on the tension releasing pin in the needle thread tension unit. So these are working very, very smoothly, and they look good. So I didn't take them out just for this video, but you certainly can do that. And both of these can get broken or bent. This especially can get bent when the machine hasn't been used and people, you know, buy it at a garage sale and they're trying to lift the pressure bar, and the bushing here is so full of old dried up stuff, it won't lift, and man, they really force it. It can bend or break this lever, and when this will go up and the bar hasn't raised, and they'll keep pushing and they'll bend this lever or break off this little tail on there right there. So those are things to watch for when you go to buy. So let's see how we're going to put these back together now, because you've cleaned it or you've repaired it, or you know, replaced a broken part or whatever. So since I have these open, I have a little cup here with some sewing machine oil. So I'm going to take my little cotton bud here, and I'm just going to put some oil in those holes for the swivel studs. Give them a good little oiling, and I take the other end and get it oiled up, and come up here in the body and get that nice and oiled up. Okay, maybe I can set this up here and get a little closer to it now. Okay, so it's very easy to, whoop, almost knock my oil over. So the first thing that I like to do is put in this anchor hinge stud with the take-up lever attached because it doesn't have a flat spot, right? So I'm just going to put it in there like so. Then I need to position the lever and the counter balance to line up. Let's see, how come that isn't going up? Because I want to line up the hole with this to get the stud in there. Let me move it down a little bit. Remember how I said I like to line it up when I take it off with the connecting link going down and then this coming down this way like that. So I have the bottom link of the take-up lever positioned over the hole in the counterweight so that I can push this stud into it, right? Let me see if I get that in there. Wiggle everything around. It's very tight fit onto the link of the take-up. There. Okay. Let me turn that now and see. Okay. So the first thing that you want to do is tighten this hinge stud into the counterbalance. So if you remember, you have to position that counterbalance up like that so that you can get your screwdriver in. Whoop, a little too far, you can get your screwdriver in back here where the set screw is. Let me turn that around a little and see if I can kind of get a shot of that in the camera here. So there's that set screw. Let me get my screwdriver in there, and then I can use the screwdriver like a lever to position everything better. Okay, so my screwdriver is in that set screw for this hinge stud, and let's take a look and see where's that flat spot now that I got everything in pretty good condition. There's my flat spot right there. So I'm going to line up that flat spot in line with my set screw down here, and I'm going to push this into the counterbalance until it's flush with the counterbalance. I'm not going to put all my weight on it. I just want it to be touching. I don't want it loose, because if it's loose and I tighten the set screw, it's just going to be wicky-wacky. It's going to have play in it, which we don't want. So let's see if I can tighten this up now. And whoops, I came off of the set screw. Come in here and get back on that set screw. And I might have turned the flat spot by doing that too. And I might have, so let me pull this up again. and check where's my flat spot. Ah, what the heck, I'll pull it all out and show it to you. There's my flat spot. Okay, so I want that to go down to match up with my set screw in there. Just like that. Then I have to kind of hold all this, because when I started to push on the set screw, it started moving, right? So I have to hold the mechanism so it doesn't turn, but I want to gently keep that flush with the counterbalance too. So maybe something like that. And see if I can get back into that set screw. Now you could have this sitting on your workbench or table, and you could be doing this from the top of the machine instead of kind of like the side way I'm doing it for the video, you know. Because I'm having a hard time seeing that set screw in there. I think I got it, but it's still a little bit loose. There, now I think I got it. Okay, so gently but completely pushed in all the way. Tighten the set screw on the flat spot so you don't have any play here. It's not loose. The pieces are all touching. They're not jammed together to bind, right? I wonder if I put this up here like this and move the camera a little bit, I could show you that. I could show you that set screw better. I don't know. Get in there a little bit. You got to be kind of careful here, because sometimes this looks clear to me in the camera, but then on the video it's blurry. Get my pointer here. So right here is that set screw, right there. And I can see it plain as day that it is countersunk down past the surface of the counterweight. So I know I'm on that flat spot because it went down inside just a little bit, like a 64th of an inch or something. Okay? And if you set the machine like this, when you're working on it, you'll see it very easy. You know, you'll just be sitting there standing at your bench with your screwdriver in here, and you can be holding this like this, and be nice and steady here. So no play on this stud. Now we're going to come on the back side here, and we're going to put in this set screw, or tighten it, and we're going to push our stud in all the way. Okay, but remember it has that milled out or machined out part all the way around. So the stud doesn't have a flat spot, so it can be any which way in there. And the secret with this is, when you push it in there, you don't want it sticking out. But on this one, you don't hold it. Where's my set screw? On this one, there. On this one, you don't have to hold the stud in. Once you push it in, you slowly start tightening it, and at the same time, you turn your hand wheel towards the front of the machine, and you just keep turning the hand wheel while you slowly tighten. And if the hand wheel starts binding, if you feel something binding, like, oh man, it gets to this point and it kind of like gets stuck, then you may want to pull the stud away just a little bit. But the idea is that you let the stud kind of self-center with the set screw while you're turning it. Okay? Then everything gets tightened and you don't have play, but you don't have binding either. So I don't have any binding going on. When I don't have a hand wheel, but when I turn that shaft, it's sweet. It feels the same all the way around. Now this can hit over here and feel like, you know, something stuck, but if you just go slow, it'll go past that point. So I don't have any binding. Every place that moves, it has the same amount of resistance, which is hardly any. It's very smooth. So I don't have any of these parts too hard together in binding. So what I want to see is, do I have play up in the connecting link up here? Is it not binding because it's like not all the way in? So I'm going to set it up kind of in that spot where I do it when I'm going to remove everything. And I do that because I can just reach in and pinch that connecting link, or anchoring link, and I can go like this. Try and push up and down. And if it starts popping up and down, bink, 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 bink over here, you know this didn't get all the way in and stay there while you were turning the set screw. Okay? So if you have a machine that binds and you're sure it's not your, needle bar or other parts here, and you think it may be this, like I said, the machine can get dropped and this can get bent up here, and it's not broken, you don't realize it, but it's a little binding. Then it's easy to test. You don't have to take it apart like I did. Just go in there and loosen that set screw on the anchoring stud and wiggle it a little bit to move it out just a millimeter, and then turn your hand wheel and see, oh wow, it doesn't bind anymore. Okay, then you can just push this back flush and eliminate that binding by having this stud all the way in and tightened with the set screw on the flat spot, having the anchoring stud all the way in, but not pushing it in, or not holding it in. Push it in the first time and then tighten this back up while you're turning the hand wheel, and it'll find the sweet spot. If it was too tight, it'll work a little bit loose. See? And then you just verify that you don't have any play in the mechanism, that it's not all jumping around and floppy, because you'll hear that when you sew back and forth. Sometimes you can even see it if it's really loose, if it has way too much play. So that's how you remove and replace the thread take-up mechanism on a 237. And many other singers are that way. I mean, I've got I don't know, 400 videos I've put on, and several of them involve this take-up lever on different models, and it's a very similar setup to this, where you've got an anchor hinge stud here to anchor the whole thing to the machine and give it a base, and then you've got this hinge stud that goes through some of the mechanism into this counterweight, and that's how it gets the motion. Ta-da. Okay. So, you know, it's a couple of set screws. That's it. Once you get the set screws loosened and the bushings pulled out and the needle bar bracket and presser bar and needle bar all lifted out of here, then this is what you see, and you can take out and clean and put back in, or replace a broken part, or take these hinge screws and unscrew them and clean everything, or replace any of these broken parts. So this wasn't the zigzag mechanism video, but it was pretty good, because you may have to do this someday. Thanks for tuning in and watching another one of my videos. I really enjoy making them, and I enjoy the comments and questions and stuff like that. So I hope you'll come back for the next video about Stella. No matter what it is, I'll try and make it worth your time. So take care.